Hello everyone and welcome to this month's Masterclass, which is all about entries. Now these are a really important part of Declare Play, a part of planning what you're going to do next, and in some cases trying to actually create entries that you don't already have. So there are three parts that we're going to look at today. The first one is what you do when planning your entries. The second is about creating new ones. As I just mentioned, it can sometimes be possible. And the third part is about managing your entries. So you're making sure that you're using them at the times that fit your plan best. So let's start with planning your entries, which always starts with thinking about what you need to do on the hand overall. So it will always necessitate thinking about the general line that you're going to take on the hand, which will of course require that you count your tricks at the beginning. So depending on whether you're in a suit contract or a no trump contract, you might count winners or losers. Generally what people do and what is easiest is to count winners in no trumps and to count losers in suit contracts. But really it does help to be able to do both in either kind of contract. Then once you've done that, you've realised what your shortfall is and how many tricks you need for the rest of your contract. You need to work out which hand you should be playing each of the suits from. So thinking about, okay, I've got this particular holding in diamonds in the dummy and this in the declarer, so which side should I be starting from? Then you need to count how many entries you have in each hand. It helps to do this actually explicitly, but as you get more experience, you'll just be able to gauge whether you've got enough for what you need to do. But when you're first starting out, you will need to start by actually getting a number for that. Then if you need them and if it's possible to do, you might need to then create some entries that you don't already have. And once you've covered all those 4 steps, that will lead you to a plan where you actually make your plan and you cross to the right hand, the one that you want to start from, and that then you're able to play a suit which is going to produce the tricks that you need for the shortfall. So you might notice that the summary of what you end up with is almost like it's a backwards version of the steps that we've just covered. So you get to an overall plan where you are taking your action in order to fulfill a requirement, which is the suit that's going to get the tricks that you need, which is obviously the first thing you need to work out. So that's why it's important to do these things, because they eventually lead you to your plan naturally. So once you've decided what you need, you then need to think about in what way you're going to use that information. So sometimes you're faced with 2 decisions, such as with Finesse, where you might have 2 finesses available and you have to decide what to use your entry for. First piece of advice is to choose the finesse that might give you another entry, because often that means you can do both. That could be that the finesse winning is the one providing you with an entry. So you might have a situation where you have a 2-way finesse, like in this example, and you actually are really struggling for entries to one of the hands. Or maybe it's not even that it's lacking in entries, but it might just be that you have a lot of things to do from that side. So therefore, the most advantageous thing to do would be to try to play for a situation where the queen is on a favourable side for you. So if you wanted to be in the hand that holds Ace Jack 4, more, then you want to be in the hand that has king 10-6. Then you would try playing a small one towards the jack, hoping that that finesse works, because if it does, you get an extra entry to that hand. But alternatively, if you'd rather be starting in the hand that has king 10-6, then you'd take the finesse the other way around and you would play small to the 10. This is of course only if you don't have a strong indication that the queen is in one side rather than the other, because ideally you want to be able to take the correct finesse. But if you don't have any extra information, then you would go for the extra entry. It's also possible to take a finesse, find that it loses, but even if it loses, it gives you another entry back to that hand. So you can kind of have your cake and eat it. You can try the finesse, and then when it loses, it gives you a way back to take the other one instead. So look at these two combinations. In one of them, you've got Jack 10 in, let's say, the dummy, and Ace Queen 8-5 in your own hand. Whereas the other finesse that you're choosing between has 8-5 in the dummy and Ace Queen Jack 10 in your hand. So you're choosing which finesse to take out of those two. And the nice thing is that if you choose the correct one, Jack 10, then even if you play the Jack and you let it run around and it loses the trick, your 10 is now a winner, and you can use that as an entry, which will then allow you to still take a finesse using your 8-5. Whereas if you commit by playing the 8-5 suit first, you play your 5, you take a finesse and it loses, now you don't have an alternative way of getting back to the hand to take the Jack 10 finesse. Another thing is that when you're making your plan for your entries, you want to be able to use them wisely. So you want to be able to use them for things where they benefit you and they potentially bring you more tricks, or even definitely. So that means that you need to be choosing to play a suit that you can only play from the hand you're already in. So sometimes the opponents lead a thing and perforce you end up stuck in the dummy, for example. Well, while you're in the dummy, you may as well use that entry that you've been given to play a suit that you can only play from that side. So this often happens in no trumps, where you end up playing a suit where you can take a finesse, rather than your long suit, which you could play from either side. And of course, normally in no trumps you would want to be playing the long suit, but if you're running low on entries, maybe you want to play the suit that requires that entry. That means that you get maximum value out of your entries because you're using each one for a useful job. Another thing to think about is which hand you want to start from in the first place. So in general, you want to be playing from weakness towards strength. That's a finesse type thing. But also for general positional plays, such as playing a low to a king, or low to a sort of king-queen combination, generally playing from the side with the low cards towards the side with the high cards. Here we've got an example of a finesse position, which you should all be comfortable with now, but of course you would start from the dummy. And then another thing to think about when you're thinking about which hand to start from is that you should be saving entries for when you want to cache tricks that you've worked on, and tricks that you've finally established. So there's no good establishing tricks in a suit in order to never get there again. So when you have a decision, such as with this heart suit, where you have the king in one hand and the ace in the other, you want to save that king to make sure you still have it once your diamonds are established. So what you should do is win in hand first, then you can push out the ace of diamonds by force, and then once the ace of diamonds is gone, doesn't even matter if the opponents duck the appropriate number of times, you've still got that king of hearts intact to get you over to the hand with the diamond winners. Now that we've done all our planning, we need to think about ways of creating entries that we don't already have. These ways can often look very counterintuitive, but you do get used to doing it. Once you make your plan, it does normally mean that the opportunities present themselves, because you're so focused on how many entries you need to a particular hand or what you're going to use them for, that you kind of see these suggest themselves as ideas. But you're never going to see them unless you've been given a clue about what they might look like. So let's look at them. Now, one is something we covered a little bit in a previous masterclass, which was all about unblocking. And we talked about unblocking by overtaking. This is not exactly the same situation, but it's kind of a similar idea. Overtaking your winner. So of course, if you've got a singleton king and then you've got an ace in the other hand, you want to be able to score them separately. But sometimes that's no good to you. Sometimes it doesn't even help. So then instead, the entry is more valuable to you. So you can overtake the king with the ace to reach the dummy. And then once you're in the dummy, you can do whatever you needed to do with your entry. So normally you wouldn't think of this singleton king as an entry, but it can be as long as you overtake with the ace. Another thing you might be able to do, which also looks very counterintuitive, is ruff a winner. So it could be usually that the winner's in the base hand, so you're already expecting not to lose any tricks in that suit. And it might be that it's not providing a useful discard, which is often the case if it's in the base hand. So that card currently isn't doing anything. You're already expecting not to lose that trick. So roughing it doesn't change the fact that you're not expecting to lose it, because you still win if you rough. But on top of the fact that it doesn't cost, it might actually even be beneficial, because it provides you with an entry to the other hand. Okay, managing your entries. How do you decide exactly when to use them? Well, you can actually engineer it sometimes by deliberately winning with a higher card than you actually need to win with. Sometimes that means you enforce winning in the hand that has fewer entries at the point when you actually need to be there. Let's look at an example, because there's a lot to unpack with this. So here's an example where your left-hand opponent has overcalled one heart and the opponents lead the 5. So that same opponent who bid one heart has led the 5 of hearts. And in the dummy you have queen to 3, and in your own hand you have ace jack to 3. But you've also got this lovely source of tricks in diamonds that isn't any tricks at the moment, but could easily establish some by pushing out the ace. So what you want to do here is you want to save that queen of hearts to be an entry later, at the point when the diamonds are established. And of course, this is the lead. The diamonds aren't tricks yet. You want to wait. So even though you know that your left-hand opponent has the king, you know that your queen will win the trick, you don't want to try playing it now, because if you do that, you're using up your entry before the diamonds are tricks. Similarly, you don't want to play low from the dummy and then win the jack in your hand, because if you do that, your left-hand opponent can actually stop you from using the queen as an entry, because when you play the 2 towards the dummy, they can hop up with the king, and now you're completely stuffed. You don't have the entry back when you need it. So instead what you do is you play low from the dummy, but then you go up with the ace. Even though right-hand opponent doesn't have the king, isn't going to play the king, you win higher than necessary, with the ace, and then once the ace has been won, whenever you play a heart towards the dummy, it doesn't matter whether left-hand opponent wins, because if they win, you just play low from the dummy. And if they don't win, then your queen will win the trick. So what you can do is you can win the ace of hearts on the first trick, you play a diamond to knock out the ace of diamonds, they duck until you run out of diamonds in your hand. I don't care, because when I play a heart, doesn't matter what left-hand opponent does, my queen will provide the entry. So this is quite an unintuitive thing, but once you've seen it a few times, you'll start to be able to visualize it a bit more easily. Another thing for managing exactly when your entries get used is about ducking, which is very, very related to the previous masterclass. So this is something we kind of saw in passing on one of the deals, but it's nice to talk about it explicitly. So it could be that you don't have an entry problem at the moment, but you know you're going to have one, or suspect you're going to have one later. So by ducking early, you prevent that later problem, and it might be that it solves the whole suit for you. So for example, here you've got ace, queen, jack, 7, 6, 5 in the dummy, so you've got 6 cards, and you've got 2 small in your hand, and you know when you play a low one that left-hand opponent's king of diamonds is very, very likely to be a singleton. So when the king pops up, it seems extremely, extremely tempting and indeed natural to just overtake. But if you do that, what will happen is it goes ace, queen, jack, and then on the 4th round of the suit, right-hand opponent will win. And because you won't have any diamonds left in your hand, you won't be able to get over there to cash the remaining diamonds. So what you want to do is allow the king to hold on the 1st round of the suit. So it goes 3, king, now you play your 5, and by ducking early, you still have the 4 in your hand to cross over and play the ace, the queen, and the jack, drawing out the rest of right-hand opponent's diamonds, and therefore playing the 7 and the 6 at the end. So you get to enjoy all of your length winners in one go. So now what you need to do is go to the tournament on Funbridge. You should be already here if you're seeing this video, and you can try the practice hands and see how you get on. Good luck everybody, and I will see you on the other side.